A heavy wooden crate opens and a furry engineer waddles into the cold Scottish water.
This past week, for the first time, beavers were legally released into the English countryside.
It looks like a happy ending for a species that was hunted to extinction long ago. But wait until you see what happened once the humans left. Recent recordings from the release sites are showing a disturbing reality that many are not seeing. These beavers are not just building dams, they are starting a war with the people who live there. It is a key detail that most news reports are leaving out. This story goes way deeper than just a few flooded fields and chewed up trees. Mystery beneath the surface. The story of the beaver in Scotland is one of those things that sounds great on paper, but gets complicated fast. For hundreds of years, these animals were nothing more than a memory. They were hunted until the last one was gone back in the 1500s. People wanted their fur, their meat, and even stuff from their bodies to make medicine. But recently, a group of scientists decided it was time for a comeback. They picked a place called Knapdale Forest and let 11 beavers from Norway go into the wild. At first, it was like a celebration. People were happy to see a native species return. However, once those beavers got settled, they started doing what they do best. They began to change the world around them in ways that were almost too fast to believe. See, a beaver is basically a four-legged construction crew. They do not just live in the water, they own it. They started felling trees that were decades old. They used their sharp teeth to cut down massive trunks in just a few hours. Then they dragged those trees into the streams to build dams. These dams are not just little piles of sticks. They are massive structures made of mud, rocks, and wood. Some of them can be hundreds of feet long. This is where the disturbing part starts. The footage from the release sites shows that these dams are so strong they can stop a whole river. When the water stops moving, it has to go somewhere. That somewhere is usually onto someone else's land. The cameras caught fields that used to be full of crops turning into giant swamps. Farmers who have worked their land for generations are waking up to find their tractors sinking in mud. It is not just a little bit of water either. We are talking about thousands of gallons of water sitting on top of prime agricultural soil. This water stays there for weeks, and it ruins everything. One of the most overlooked aspects of this is how fast it happens. A beaver can build a dam overnight. One day a farmer has a dry field, and the next day he has a lake. And get this, the beavers are not just staying in the spots where the scientists put them. They are moving, and they are moving fast. The footage shows these animals traveling through drainage pipes and over small hills to find new places to build. They are incredibly smart and very stubborn. If a farmer tries to break a dam to save his field, the beavers will have it fixed by the next morning. It is like a never-ending battle between man and nature. Some people say this is a good thing because it creates homes for fish and birds. But for the people trying to make a living, it is a nightmare. There are even videos of beavers chewing through expensive fences and girdling trees in commercial forests. Girdling is when they eat a ring of bark all the way around a tree. This stops the tree from getting nutrients, and it dies standing up. Imagine losing an entire section of valuable timber because of one or two rodents. Many are not seeing the truth here because the media loves the cute side of the story. They show the little baby beavers, called kits, playing in the water. They do not show the bank erosion that is making roads collapse. Beavers love to dig burrows into the sides of riverbanks. These burrows can go back 40 or 50 feet. When the ground gets heavy with rain, the whole bank can cave in. If there is a road or a bridge nearby, it is in big trouble. The crazy part is that this is happening all over the place now. What started as a small trial with 11 animals has turned into a population of thousands. Some people think there was a secret release in a place called Tayside, because beavers just started showing up there out of nowhere. Nobody expected this to happen so quickly, but the evidence is right there on the screen. The footage reveals that the beavers in Tayside are even more aggressive with their building. They have taken over drainage systems that were built to protect the towns from flooding. Now, those systems are blocked by beaver dams. It is a huge risk for everyone living nearby, and that is putting it lightly. The tension between the people who want the beavers and the people who have to live with them is reaching a breaking point. You have conservationists on one side saying we need these animals to save the planet. On the other side, you have families losing their livelihoods. Basically, The return of the beaver has turned into a social war. There are rumors that some people are taking matters into their own hands. Because the beavers are protected by law, you cannot just move them or stop them without a special permit. This has led to some very heated arguments in town halls across Scotland. The footage from these areas shows a landscape that looks more like a wild wilderness from the ancient past than a modern country. For some, that is the dream. For others, it is a sign that things are spinning out of control. Wait until you see how these animals are affecting the fish that everyone is so worried about. Vanished giants come home. To understand why this is such a big deal, you have to look at the history of the beaver in this part of the world. Hands down, they were once the kings of the Scottish rivers. But by the time the 16th century rolled around, they were gone. Humans wanted their thick fur to make hats. They also wanted a substance called castoreum that beavers produce. Back then, people thought it could cure headaches and other pains. Because of this, the beavers were hunted until there was not a single one left. For 400 years, the rivers of Scotland were quiet. They were basically just channels of water, without much life in them. When the reintroduction started, the goal was to bring back the natural balance. Scientists call the beaver a keystone species. This means they are so important that the whole ecosystem depends on them. Think of them like the glue that holds everything together. When they build a dam, they create a pond. That pond becomes a home for frogs, dragonflies, and all sorts of birds. The water in the pond is also cleaner because the dam acts like a giant filter. It traps sand and dirt, leaving the water downstream much clearer. This sounds like a win for everyone, right? Well, it is not that simple though. The footage from the newer release sites shows that the environment is changing in ways that are hard to manage. In the Cairngorms, which is a massive mountain range, beavers are being put into areas that are very sensitive. Some of these glens have rare plants that only grow in certain conditions. When a beaver floods an area, those plants can drown. It is a trade-off that many people are struggling to accept. Do we save the beaver, or do we save the rare flowers? There is also the issue of the salmon. Scotland is famous for its salmon fishing, and it brings in a lot of money for rural areas. Anglers are really worried because they see these giant dams and think the fish cannot get past them. Salmon need to swim up rivers to lay their eggs. If a beaver dam is 4 feet high and made of thick mud, a small fish might not be able to jump over it. The footage shows some salmon struggling to find a way through. Proponents of the beavers say that the fish have lived with beavers for thousands of years, and they will find a way. But the fish populations are already low because of climate change and pollution. Adding another obstacle feels like the final straw for some people. A lot of people are confused about why we are doing this now. Why bring back an animal that causes so much trouble? The answer usually comes down to water management. You see, when it rains hard in the mountains, all that water rushes down the rivers and floods the towns in the valleys. Beaver dams slow that water down. They act like little sponges that soak up the extra rain and let it out slowly. This can actually prevent big floods from hitting people's homes. It is a natural way to protect our cities. But the catch is that the flooding happens on the farmland instead. So the town is safe, but the farmer loses his crop. It is a classic case of one person's gain being another person's loss. One of the most interesting things caught on camera is how beavers interact with other animals. You can see deer coming down to the beaver ponds to drink. You see otters using the beaver lodges as a place to rest. A lodge is the house a beaver builds in the middle of the pond. It has an underwater entrance so that predators like foxes or wolves cannot get in. Inside, it is dry and warm. It is amazing to see how much life a single pair of beavers can bring to a dead stretch of river. But as the population grows, they start to run out of room. This is when they start moving into places they should not be. They show up in garden ponds and near golf courses. There are stories of beavers chewing through the wooden supports of garden sheds. It sounds funny until it happens to you. Everyone's obsessed with the idea of a wild Scotland, but the reality is that Scotland is a small island with a lot of people. There is not always enough room for both humans and wild animals to do whatever they want. The footage shows beavers crossing busy roads at night, which is a huge danger for drivers. A full-grown beaver can weigh over 60 pounds. Hitting one of those in a car is like hitting a large rock. As the beavers spread, the government has had to make some tough choices. They gave the beavers protected status in 2019. This means you can be in big trouble if you hurt one. But they also started a program to move beavers from places where they are causing trouble to places where they are wanted. This is called translocation. It is a very expensive and difficult job. You have to trap the beaver, check its health, and then drive it hundreds of miles to a new home. And even then, there is no guarantee the beaver will stay where you put it. The most disturbing footage actually comes from the areas where the beavers were not supposed to be in the first place. Illegal engineering under the radar. While the official project in Knapdale was being watched closely by scientists, something else was happening in a place called Tayside. Out of nowhere, beavers started showing up in the River Erne and the River Tay. Nobody knew where they came from. Some people think they escaped from private collections, while others believe they were released on purpose by people who did not want to wait for the government to act. Whatever the reason, these beavers were not part of the plan. They were basically living off the grid. And because they were in an area with a lot of flat, rich farmland, the trouble started almost immediately. The footage from Tayside is much different than the footage from the forest. Here, you see beavers living in irrigation ditches. These are man-made channels that farmers use to water their crops. When a beaver builds a dam in a ditch, it is a disaster. The water backs up and floods the fields, but it can also cause the banks of the ditch to burst. This can wash away entire sections of a field in minutes. The farmers in Tayside were furious. They had hundreds of beavers living on their land, and they were not allowed to do anything about it. For a long time, the government did not even want to admit the Tayside beavers were there. They called them an unofficial population. But you cannot ignore hundreds of 60-pound animals for long. Eventually, the footage of the damage became too much to hide. The government had to step in and decide what to do. This led to a very dark period in the beaver story. Because there was no plan for these animals, the only way to manage them at the time was to end their lives. Hundreds of beavers were removed by people with licenses to protect their land. This is the part of the story that most people find really disturbing. On one hand, you have people trying to save the species. On the other hand, the government was allowing hundreds of them to be shot every year. It felt like a total contradiction. One video shows a mother beaver being taken away, leaving her kits behind. It is heart-wrenching stuff. This created a massive outcry from the public. People started asking why we were bringing beavers back if we were just going to end their lives as soon as they caused a problem. It made the whole rewilding movement look like a failure. But here is the deal. The farmers felt they had no choice. They were losing tens of thousands of dollars every year. One farmer showed footage of his prize-winning potatoes rotting under 3 feet of water. He said he could not afford to keep the beavers on his land. This is the core of the conflict. It is a battle between environmental values and economic reality. Many people in the cities love the idea of beavers, but they do not have to deal with the consequences. The people in the countryside are the ones paying the price. The crazy part is how the beavers have adapted to the farmland. They have learned to use corn stalks and other crops to help build their dams. They are not just using wood anymore. They are using whatever they can find. This shows just how smart these animals are. They are not just mindless rodents. They are active managers of their environment. They are trying to create the perfect home for themselves, just like we do. But their idea of a perfect home is a swamp, and ours is a dry house. The rumors about how the beavers got to Tayside still fly around today. Some say it was a group of activists who wanted to force the government's hand. If that was the goal, it worked. The Tayside population grew so large that the government had to grant them legal protection. Now, you cannot just remove them. You have to try other things first. This includes putting pipes through the dams to keep the water at a certain level. It also includes wrapping trees in wire mesh so the beavers cannot chew on them. These are called flow devices, and they are a key detail in the new management plan. But even with these tools, the beavers are still winning the ground war. They are moving into new rivers every year. The footage from the latest surveys shows they have reached the outskirts of major cities. It is only a matter of time before they start showing up in urban parks. Imagine going for a walk in a city park and seeing a beaver dam blocking the local creek. It is going to change how we think about our relationship with nature. We are not used to sharing our space with animals that can change the landscape so much. There is a much bigger mystery involving a global plan that some people are starting to talk about. Mystery of the managed wilderness. As the beavers continue to spread, some people are starting to look at the bigger picture. They are asking if there is more to this than just bringing back a lost animal. There are some pretty wild theories floating around the internet. Some people claim that the beaver release is part of a global plan to push people off the land. The idea is that if you flood the farms and make it impossible to grow food, the people will have to move to the cities. This would leave the countryside open for giant wilderness projects that only the elite can enjoy. It sounds like a movie plot, but for some farmers who are watching their land disappear underwater, it feels very real. Other theories suggest that beavers are being used to hide the effects of climate change. By creating these natural sponges, the government can claim they are fixing the flooding issues without having to spend money on big engineering projects. There are even whispers that the beavers are spreading diseases that haven't been seen in Scotland for centuries. While there is no scientific evidence for most of these claims, they show how much fear and distrust this project has created. When people feel like they are not being heard, they start looking for alternative explanations. The truth is usually much simpler, but it is not any less intense. The beaver reintroduction is a giant experiment in how we want our world to look. For a long time, we have tried to control nature. We straightened the rivers, drained the swamps, and cut down the forests. We wanted everything to be neat and tidy. The beavers are the opposite of that. They are messy, unpredictable, and loud. They represent a shift in how we think about the environment. Instead of us managing nature, we are letting nature manage itself. And that is a very scary thought for a lot of people. One of the most overlooked aspects of the beaver story is the impact on tourism. In some areas, beaver watching has become a huge business. People are traveling from all over the world to see these animals in the wild. This brings money into small villages that were struggling to survive. It creates jobs for guides and hotel owners. So, while the farmer is losing money, the local pub might be making more than ever. This creates even more tension within the community. It is a complicated web of winners and losers. The footage from the most recent releases shows a new approach. The scientists are now working much more closely with the local people. They are trying to find spots where the beavers can live without causing too much trouble. They are also providing more support for farmers who have beaver damage. This includes money to help pay for the loss of crops or the cost of moving the animals. It is not perfect, but it is a step in the right direction. The goal is to reach a state of coexistence where both humans and beavers can thrive. But here is the catch. Beavers do not follow rules. You can pick the perfect spot for them, and they might decide they like the ditch behind the local school better. They are always going to be a challenge. The real question is whether we are willing to put up with that challenge for the sake of a healthier planet. The footage of the new wetlands shows just how much biodiversity these animals bring. You see rare birds like ospreys hunting in the beaver ponds. You see otters and water voles making a comeback. It is a beautiful sight, hands down. What most people do not realize is that the beaver is just the beginning. There are plans to bring back other animals too. Some people want to release lynx, which are large wildcats, into the Scottish forests. Others are even talking about bringing back wolves one day. If a 60-pound rodent can cause this much drama, imagine what a pack of wolves would do. The beaver is basically the test case for the future of rewilding in the United Kingdom. If we can find a way to live with them, it opens the door for much bigger things. The latest recordings show that the beavers are now building in places where they were never even released. They are moving across land and through the sea to find new territory. They have been spotted swimming in salt water to get from one river mouth to another. This is a level of ambition that nobody predicted. It means that the beaver is here to stay, whether we like it or not. The landscape of Scotland is being rewritten every single night by an animal that was once a ghost. So, here is the deal. We have to decide what kind of world we want to live in. Do we want a world that is safe and controlled, or do we want a world that is wild and full of life? The beaver is forcing us to make that choice right now. It is a key detail that will define the next 100 years of conservation. The disturbing footage we see is just a reflection of the growing pains of a changing world. It is not always pretty, but it is certainly not boring. But there is one final piece of the puzzle that might change your mind about everything. Legacy of the Scottish beaver. Basically, the return of the beaver to Scotland is a story about power. It is about who gets to decide what the land is used for. Is it for the people who own it, or is it for the nature that was there first? There are still many rumors in the air, but one thing is for sure. The beaver is a force of nature that cannot be ignored. They have transformed dead, straight rivers into vibrant, messy wetlands in just a few years. That is a miracle of engineering that no human could ever match. What we are seeing now is the struggle of a modern society trying to make room for the wild. It is not going to be easy, and there will be more disturbing footage in the future. There will be more flooded fields and more dead trees. But there will also be more life. There will be cleaner water and more space for the creatures that have nowhere else to go. One of the most important things is to keep talking to each other. We need to listen to the farmers and the scientists. We need to find a way to share this beautiful country with its original inhabitants. The big question is, are we ready for a world that we cannot fully control? The beavers are proving that nature has its own plans. We can either fight against them, or we can learn to work with them. It's not that simple, though, because it requires a lot of patience and a lot of compromise. But if we can get it right, the reward is a landscape that is truly alive. Scotland is leading the way in this global experiment, and the whole world is watching. What do you think about the return of these ancient engineers to the Scottish countryside? Is the environmental boost worth the cost to the local farmers? Let us know in the comments below, and do not forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives.